Now, some tools for implementing all of these things. Love a good tool. They can be quite useful. So the first tool I'm going to talk about is project management software. There are a million different kinds of project management software, and I don't care which one you use, but I like Asana, and I've also used GitHub. And what these do is they help you assign tasks to team members with deadlines and dates. And then you can attach files to those assignments. You can track the progress of those assignments. So I have a big literature review project going on where I assigned my RAs to look through 10 years of publications in a specific journal and count how many of them were experiments, basically. In doing that, I've been able to track, oh, thanks, Derek. I've been able to track like, oh yeah, okay, so Shay has done all of hers. I'm still waiting on Alexis, Kai is done, and I can just see who's done what and how it's going. And that's really nice. And then I can go back and remember who was doing what, when, if I need it, if I have to check up on a question and I did a spot check of all of the years to make sure that I agree, you know, okay, I looked at 1999 American Sociological Review and I found a different number than the person. I can see what person did it and double check with them and ask them, how'd you count this one? Oh, okay, that's why we have the different number, something like that. So it's really, really useful. Everyone's on the same page. If you don't know what to do, you just go back to Asana and they can write you little notes in Asana and you can write it back. Yeah, and there's a great series and I went to the series on using GitHub for project management. It's really useful as well. Similar, you can assign tasks to people, see when they complete them. It's nice, but GitHub can be kind of intimidating for folks because it's not something that people, it wasn't really created for, like the general user interface wasn't created for doing all of this. It's kind of evolved into something that you can do with that. But Asana is really like user-friendly, similarly Basecamp and stuff. So yeah, and Asana is free up to a certain number of users. Some of the functions they don't let you do, but I've only used the free version for my lab and it's worked great. So yeah, something to think about. Advantages of project managed software. It again helps keep track of things. You have deadlines, you can see when things are complete, and then you can give people like thumbs ups and great jobs and, you know, positive reinforcement as soon as they complete a task, which is really nice. And it makes collaborating really easy because you can link files, have conversations, create tasks, all in the same thing. So it encourages you to organize things. When I'm teaching a class, I put all of my TA's tasks in Asana at the beginning of the semester so they can see what will be expected of them each week, which is really nice. Similarly, at the beginning of the semester with my lab, we think about what we're working on the semester and try to create tasks for at least the next 5 weeks. Often we'll say, oh, we overestimated our ability to do this in a timely fashion. Let's push these back a week or two, but at least we know what we're working toward and, you know, where we're at with that. Another great tool for planning is pre-registration. And pre-registration is something that's being talked about more in the social sciences. It's been done a little bit in some of the medical sciences, but not in others. All that pre-registration is the process of stating your hypotheses, desired samples, exclusion criteria, study design, analysis plans, all of that on a public repository before embarking on a study. It's part of a larger movement toward, I'll get to your question, Joanne, in just 1 second. It's part of a larger movement toward open science. And here, when I talk about hypotheses and desired samples, that's kind of a more deductive framework, but you can actually use pre-registration if you're doing inductive research as well, or descriptive research. So you can say, hey, I'm planning on interviewing folks and trying to understand what the heck is happening in this community. And this is my planned sample. This is like the interview instrument, and then you can update it as the project goes on and say more about it. So other people can see how you sampled people, they can see your interview instrument, and they can see as much as you want to put on there. And that helps so other people can look at that and move forward with it. And it helps you think about what you're doing and how you're going to update it over time. So there's a great paper that I can share with you all afterwards that I didn't think of linking in here, and I'm sorry, about how you can use it for different kinds of research, and I found that to be really helpful. So it doesn't only have to be used for deductive work. So Joanne started using Trello, but it seems to duplicate what you do with a Google Excel sheet in terms of updating tasks. So I don't use a Google Excel sheet. So if you've got a system that works for you, use it. Whatever works for you is great. I think so often people are project managing though, just by like sending some emails here and there, kind of keeping a general track of what's going on. As long as you have some sort of a system or a structure in place and it works for you, that is great. If you're doing things on more of an ad hoc basis, think about adopting some sort of a project management software. And it's nice to have a project management software that makes it so you don't have to create the Google Excel sheet if that's not something that you want to do or are prepared to do or have the time to do. So yeah, whatever works well for you. I also like that I get notifications from Asana telling me when people have done stuff. You might be able to set up Google Excel to do that, which is lovely. But yeah, I haven't done that. So, okay. Steve, Microsoft Project wasn't available generally. One had to ask for access. Derek, do you know anything about Microsoft Project?
No, I don't know the restrictions around access. I know that Vanderbilt's kind of all in on Microsoft products, so I would assume that there would be a way to get access to Project. And I, with my digital commons hat on, there are a lot of tools for a lot of different kind of projects. And I think at the digital commons, we're trying to let faculty know about ones that Vanderbilt has already paid for that would be free for you to access. Some people like them, some people don't, right? And so I'm not going to say you need to use one or another, but I will say what's already paid for, because I think that's sometimes useful to know.
I think that's definitely useful to know. And Vanderbilt does their research on what ones they're going to pay for. Like they've thought through some of these things. So a lot of the stuff that I'm using, I started using in graduate school and kind of kept with. And they're working for me. And kind of if it's not broken, why fix it? Framework is what I'm working in. But if ever there comes a point where it stops working for me, I might adjust. But yeah. Okay. So back to pre-registration, basically you're just stating everything you plan to do, and it asks you questions. It asks you, how do you plan to collect this data? Who do you plan to collect it from? What the heck are you up to? I also ask my students who are doing a dissertation project or a master's thesis to pre-register it, or at least fill out the pre-registration form, because it forces them to think what their covariates are and why. It forces them to think how they're going to operationalize their variables. It really makes you think through these decisions that as advisors, we can have them think through, but we'd have to remember all of the things and ask them very specifically, or they write it out. And so I also go through pre-registration with my lab and talk through the decisions that we're making and what we're going to do on a project and get their feedback on it as we're going. And we do pre-registration as a group. And one nice thing about that is it kind of lays bare some of the hidden curriculum stuff, some of the stuff you might be doing behind the scenes, and shows them what you're doing and what all of this work is and how you're thinking about cleaning data. Pre-registration, there are some misconceptions about it, but it's not a strict set of rules that you must follow no matter what. And it doesn't prevent researchers from conducting additional exploratory analyses. And there are definitely times where it's appropriate to deviate from your plan. It's definitely also not a panacea for errors in scientific inquiry. It doesn't fix everything. I think pre-registration came out of a concern about people p-hacking or trying to find significant results or creating hypotheses after seeing the results. And these are natural instincts from people that we'd all like to believe we're above and would never do. But I think when you actually think about the process of doing research, you include education in there, and then you say, well, I have it as a categorical variable, but there aren't a lot of people in these categories. So maybe I'll look at it this other way just to see. And then that's the version you end up presenting. And that's the version that's at that statistical significance level. But maybe if you reported both of those versions, it would be a little bit more of an honest representation of what's happening broadly and the strengths and weaknesses of your data. And pre-registration forces you to stay honest with it. I'm working on a pre-registered project right now, and I was convinced myself that this one variable was not important. And turns out I thought it was before I saw the results. And so that's an important thing to know. And that's something that you can report and can be quite useful. Okay, I feel like there's a conversation in the chat that I don't need to weigh in on, so I'm gonna leave that there, but cool. But yeah, pre-registration is helpful because it encourages planning. It facilitates your sharing of findings and your plans so people can see what you were thinking. It provides an independent verification of a priori prediction. So if you're predicting something that's a little bit goes against the grain and you find that, you can say, I really did predict this ahead of time, even though some of the theory may not suggest that. So that's kind of nice. And it discourages p-hacking and p-harking, basically, coming up with our analyses afterwards. You can pre-register a study, you can click these links and they'll bring you through it. And there are lots of different kinds of pre-registration you can choose. So you can pre-register secondary data analysis, you can pre-register an experiment, you can pre-register a bunch of different kinds of research. They have like a social psychology specific one, which appeals to me, but there are a lot of different options that you can do. Another tool is a research log. A research log is basically just a log of what you're doing and why. It's essentially meeting notes and actually forcing yourself to take them. And it can take multiple forms. It could take a Google Sheet situation. It could take just a Word document that everyone has access to, a Google Doc that people have access to that they can fill in notes to. But the basics are the date, what topic you've discussed, and any notes that you have. Really simple stuff, but just kind of keeping track of things. What did we talk about last time? Where are we at? You know, if you come back to a project after being away from it and not expecting to be away from it, you can see the last thing you were thinking about and kind of return to it. You can use Asana or Google Sheets or whatever the heck you want to as kind of a research log, but having some sort of separate document can also be quite useful. So just, these are all tools. Adopt the ones that work for you. Don't adopt the ones that don't, but definitely keeping some sort of a log of what you're up to can be very useful and can save you a lot of time. We've often saved sensitivity analyses in our research log and said, okay, we did this, we did that. None of those were meaningful because I've definitely repeated sensitivity analyses before where I said, oh, what happens if we do this? And then it's something that I already saw and forgot that I did. So having that stuff in a research log can be very, very useful. I've also started publishing data management appendices and sensitivity analysis appendices with my papers. And so by keeping track of like how you're doing data management processes, how you're doing sensitivity analyses, you're preparing to share all of this information with reviewers. And it's a really nice way to kind of keep track of what you're up to. Another way to promote documentation is for coding, like in your code. We're not going to talk too much about code, but one thing I'll recommend is shorter script files because they're less prone to error and breaking and easier to find errors when they occur. So if you have thousands and thousands of lines of code and you have one little line of code that's giving you a problem, it can be harder to pinpoint that. Whereas if you have smaller files, it can be a little bit easier to find that. But if you have a lot of different files, it can be hard to keep track of, which is why I recommend a primary script file. And a primary script file is simply a script file that runs other script files. So in one script file, you say, okay, run this file, then run this file, then run this one, then run that one, then run this one, and then run that one. And all of those files are self-contained, but you can give yourself a little bit of information about what they're doing. And this is also really nice because people who are coming to look at your project and see what you did can see exactly what you did and you can walk them through it. And it's a really nice way to describe your work for yourself. And often I'll try to write my primary script file before I actually write any of the files in the primary script file, because it helps me set up a plan of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it and at least think through it. So this is another useful tool for planning ahead of time and also documenting for sharing this in the future. And then also documenting within script files. So leaving notes to yourself and others within a code file. In Stata, you can mark out code with using stars or these little lines. You can do that in other software programs with a pound sign or with a % marker if you use like LaTeX or something. So it's kind of wild, all of the different ways you can mark things out. But mark it out and say, okay, I'm going to create a new file where the occupations that are missing the values are recoded to occupations misspelled. Of course, I see that now with ACS value. Just like leaving little notes to yourself can be really, really useful for when you go back and you're looking through what you did. So I recommend trying to leave some notes to yourself, encouraging your RAs to leave notes to you and you to leave notes to them so you guys can figure out what you're doing, what you're up to, and return to it. If anyone's ever going to be looking over your work, it's useful to talk them through what your files are doing and being kind to your future self. I know a lot of us have like some COVID brain memory loss kind of stuff, like what am I up to? And finding notes in my files has been really helpful for me. So taking a minute to be nice to your future self who's going to have a foggy brain and return to this will be useful. And then the last kind of planning and organizing thing is the posting principle. And this is once files are posted, they shouldn't be changed. You want to post all of your files. So when I submit a paper for review in R&R or upon acceptance, if I'm giving a research talk or a presentation, submitting a proposal, I post it and I put it in this one folder and it sits in there and I never change anything within that folder. I can make a copy of that and then start editing that, but there's always a version of it that is just like pristine, unchanged, locked in time. It's really lovely. This is also useful for when you want to share your stuff with other people. You can find if they say, oh, hey, you gave a presentation a couple months ago. I was thinking about it. Do you have it? Yes, I do, because you posted it and everything is in that posted folder. So I really like using a posted folder. I recommend using it and sharing that idea with your RAs as well.